Good evening, everybody. My name is Vincent Salimi. I'm the mayor of the city of Pinole, and I'm welcoming you all. And I'm calling to order the special meeting of the Pinole City Council, July 12, 2022. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance in honor of the U.S. military troops? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to line item number 2, which is the land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respect to the Ohlone elders past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Item number 3, roll call, City Clerk's report and statement of conflict. Madam City Clerk, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor.
Go ahead with the roll call, please.
Thank you. Mayor Salimi.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Here.
Noting for the record that Councilmember Tabe is absent. Councilmember Toms. Here. Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Here.
Acting City Manager, Police Chief Gain.
Here.
And City Attorney Casher.
Here.
Assistant City Attorney Mogg.
Here.
And Finance Director Guillory. Here. Thank you. Mayor and Council, the agenda was posted on Thursday, July 7th at 4 p.m. with all legally required notices. 49 written comments were received in advance of the meeting, distributed to the council and staff, printed and are available at the back of the dais and also online. Does the council have any conflicts to report on our agenda items this evening? Report, thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. That concludes item number 3. We'll move on to item number 4, which is citizen to be heard. Madam City Clerk, how many citizens would like to speak tonight on an item not agendized?
All right, looks like we have one hand up online. If we can take that one first, and I can let you know how many we have in person. I think it's 2 or 3.
Excellent. Good evening. Can you please state your name, city of residence, and subject of conversation, please? Go ahead.
Hey there. I'm not sure if I was supposed to do the other sections for citizens to be heard about the agenda item.
Are you speaking on the agenda, the agendized item, the
Yeah.
charter city?
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll hold your comment for that item.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry.
So in person, we have Yvette Rico.
Now? Okay, let's start over. Good evening. My name is Yvette Rico, and tonight I speak to you as the chair of Pinole for Fair Government. Mayor, council, staff, and Pinole residents. As you are all aware, enhanced communication between the public, its government, is mutual and an ongoing goal. Pinole for Fair Government has made it its mission to engage, inform, and educate the public on the happenings in their city. In 2019, we held the first town hall, which was attended by 100 interested and engaged members of the public. In 2020, the pandemic brought all forms of interaction to a screeching halt. But in 2021, we held 8 virtual town halls. These were well attended, and the videos of these discussions continue to draw online viewers. In 2022, it became obvious that life was far from normal. But it was also clear that communication needed to be reestablished. Hoping to bring together the community in an informal and informative setting, we held 5 community conversations. Here are the stats. We've had over 125 guests attend in person. We've had 2,204 online viewers of these event videos. There are still 2 more community conversations scheduled. On July 23rd, City Manager Andrew Murray will be our guest. On July 30th, Community Development Director Lily Whalen will be our guest. I want to express our sincere appreciation to our previous speakers, Pinole Police Department, Councilor Anthony Tate, Mayor Vincent Salini, Supervisor John Joya, Fire Chief Chris Wincott, and School Board Trustee Jamila Smith-Folds. I also want to thank and acknowledge members of the council who took the time out of their busy schedules to engage with their constituents at these meetings. Thank you, Mayor Salini. Thank you, Councilor Tate. Thank you, Councilor Murphy, and thank you, Councilor Thomas. In closing, let me state that every town hall or community conversation Pinole for Fair Government has held has been a public and free event, open to all who wish to participate in the democratic process. Thank you.
Okay, we also have 2 cards that have the citizens to be heard marked Debbie Long and Bob Kopp. Do you have a general comment or comment? You do. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. To council, to those of you who are here and those of you on Zoom. Tonight, you're holding the second of 2 public meetings on a charter city. Given the importance of this topic and allowing for a more Q&A format, I'm wondering why a town hall meeting wasn't a part of this discussion. I realize it's not required, only 2 public meetings are, but it still would have been a little bit more transparent if we could have had a typical town hall meeting where we all shared comments together. On the same subject, at your last city council meeting, it was discussed that a contract with Confire was being worked on. I find it objectionable that elements of the contract, whether codified or not, won't be shared with the public before coming to the council for a vote. There appears to be no opportunity for the public to weigh in on the contract itself before it comes before you. I hope that you will consider having a discussion with the public on the proposed Confire contract in the same way that you share with the public a proposed financial plan each year. I have questions, others have questions, and simply to be told we are working on it doesn't give anyone the sense that they are being heard, much less confidence that they will have any say before it is a done deal. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions of the council. I would like to know the 3 males that are on the city council, how long they've lived in the city of Pinole, and if all 3 of them actually own a house and pay taxes to the county and to the city and to the state. I would like to have an answer to that. And a couple of things I've seen on TV, when the 2 ladies disagree with them, I think some of the things that they've said and the way they've done their job here is kind of unacceptable. To me, it was a little crude and not warranted to kind of go after them because they did not agree with the 3 guys. And I think that's wrong. And I thought one of the gentlemen that's on the council would have stepped in and made sure that didn't happen. But for some reason it didn't. And because they don't want to go along with the charter city, which I'm against, because in the long run, it gives too much authority to the city council in the future to do some of the things that, they want to do without getting enough public opinion for it. So I think they need to treat the ladies a little bit better with a whole lot more respect than what they have in the past. And I hope that can come about at the next time that they have a full council meeting. It's just unbelievable what I've seen. And like I already said, I'm against a charter city. I think the citizens of Pinole, like myself, that has paid taxes for 55 years here, should not be having to pay a tax in order to sell my home and move to another state. I don't believe we should have to do that. We've taken our homes, we've kept them up, we put the roofs on them, we painted them, and we've done maintenance on our property. So that.
Let you continue, please.
Okay, that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you, sir. We could maintain a conversation on item not related to the charter city as part of the public comments. I would appreciate it. Just in all fairness to everybody. Thank you. Any other comments, please?
Yes, Rafael Menes.
Staff and mayor, council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Rafael Minutes. I'm a resident of Pinole, and there's two things I wanted to bring up under citizens to be heard tonight. First off, I would like to congratulate Pinole Valley High School's Kalyani Tatro for her recognition by the Bay Area News Group for her exceptional play in softball and being the Tri-County Athletic League Rock Division MVP. I think that's a significant accomplishment both for Pinole Valley High School and for herself as an athlete. And I think it's worthy of recognition by the city and the community. Secondly, I would unfortunately want to note that we still have a high level of COVID-19 transmission within the city of Pinole. I believe our current cases per last 14 days per 100,000 is 769.3, which, while it's lower than our last meeting, is still the second highest level in the county overall, second only to Byron. And it's a result of an actual case count in the last 14 days of 149 cases, compared to, say, Discovery Bay having 77 or Orinda having 64. So COVID is still actively spreading within Pinole. So I'd strongly urge people indoors, especially in crowded areas like groceries, stores, and so on, to continue to wear masks to protect everyone around them, vaccinated or not, from further spread of the COVID virus. Thank you.
We have one online comment, Irma Rupert.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and public. And thank you for bringing the issue about charter city. I won't discuss it because this is just citizens to be heard. However, I do want to make a comment about comments that we're not treating people properly. Well, Mayor and Council, I too have been cussed out in public by a mayor and council. I've been told to move if I don't like or disagree with issues that are going on. I can go on and on. This is not the place and forum to discuss this. We need a little more respect. Mayor and council, there are three of you that have no political baggage that come into the city and are doing a good job. I don't care to listen to other people who have a lot of disregard to respecting the taxpayers and the citizens of Pinole. I also want to thank Bob Kopp for the car show. However, I disagree with him. When people make a comment about the car show, you don't tell people not to come back. This is a city function.
Ms.
You don't
Rupert,
have-
if you can just not address one person directly during the comment, but address all your comments to me.
Mayor,
anonymously.
I would appreciate if you do the same to other people who are speaking. However, I will refrain from doing it if you do the same thing to others. However, I don't respect people who tell you to move because we disagree. Democracy, this is a free country, freedom of speech, and I don't think that we need to carry this on. And I know some people, it's election time, got your egos together, just put it on the table. What have you done for the city in the past? We will be coming back with information. So Mayor and Council, let's get it right, put the facts on the table and tell everybody, hold on to your hats if you want to hear the truth of what's been going on in the past. Thank you, Mayor, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, any other comments, please?
I believe that concludes comments for citizens to be heard, unless anyone else. No. Thank you.
Excellent. I can still hear the phone line that is on here. That concludes item number 4. Then we'll move on to item number 5, which is the workshop item. And 5A would be to conduct a second public hearing regarding proposal for the city of Pinole to become a charter city and review the content of proposed charter and real property transfer tax ordinance. And the action tonight will be to conduct a second public hearing and provide direction to staff. Yeah, Mr. City Attorney Eric Kasher, good evening, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have with me our Assistant City Attorney, Alex Mogg, who will be presenting a PowerPoint this evening on the charter city measure, and we are both here and available to answer questions after the presentation. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Mogg.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I believe is, Alex will show up in a minute.
Let's take a 5-minute break for the computer to come back. We can, okay, I will just ask for a 5-minute break and we'll resume. It's 6:24 and we'll come back at 6:30. Thank you. You're in a break. If you like to stand up or do something else, you don't have to be seated. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, July 12, 2022, and you are watching the special city, the special council related to the Charter City, and I'm going to resume the meeting. We are on item number 5. Mr. City Attorney, good evening again. Can you please make us the presentation?
Yeah,
Let's go ahead.
Mayor, Council, Public, sorry for that technical difficulty, but I think we are ready to proceed. So just to set the stage for how we got here tonight, I'm sure that council members, but earlier this year, the council, asked staff to agendize future discussion of the possibility of becoming a charter city for the purpose of enacting a real property transfer tax, and that's been discussed a couple times over the last couple months. And on May 31st, the city council received a presentation from a pollster and consultant about a poll regarding that topic that was done within the city. And then on June 7th, the council conducted the first public hearing on the proposal of becoming a charter city. And at that time, the council provided direction to staff to schedule the second hearing to proceed with some public education and outreach, and then to also provide some direction on the draft charter, as well as the scope of the real property transfer tax and some related issues. So tonight's meeting is an opportunity. It's the second public hearing in this process, and it's an opportunity from the public to hear from the public regarding the draft charter, as well as the real property transfer tax ordinance, and to consider whether or not to continue forward with this process, and then as well to provide any additional direction on the draft charter or the real property transfer tax ordinance or any related issue to staff if the council decides to move forward. So just an overview of what a charter city is. I know the council has heard this portion of the presentation before, but so I'll go through it quickly, but just so that everyone has this same information. In California, the general law cities and charter cities. A general law city has the authority to act locally, but they have to act consistent with all state laws, as well as state statutes and the state constitution. A charter city has the additional authority to adopt laws regarding municipal affairs that are inconsistent with state statutes. They still have to comply with state and federal constitution and federal laws, but they can adopt laws regarding municipal affairs. And that's what's known as home rule. And what a municipal affair is not well defined, and it changes over time. And there's a number of cases holding this or that is a municipal affair. So some example of municipal affairs are the conduct of elections and election procedures, taxes for municipal purposes, fines for violating local ordinances. As a general law city right now, the city's fines are set by state statute, but if the city were to become a charter city and the charter allowed for it, the city could adopt higher fines, for example. Public contracting requirements, including bidding and prevailing wage requirements, could be subject to local municipal, if charter was set up that way. In the forms of government, municipal government is another example of municipal affair. Of course, if a city's charter allows for them. So how detailed is a charter? Charters range from very short, maybe just giving a city 1 or 2 powers, to very long and very detailed. If you look at some of the larger and older cities in the state, Oakland, San Francisco, they have very, very long and detailed charters. Any changes, adoption of the charter, as well as any changes to the charter require voter approval now and in the future. And the municipal code continues to exist in charter cities. The charter is more like the constitution for the city, and the municipal code are sort of the day-to-day ones. So the council decided to explore becoming a charter city for the purpose of possibly enacting a real property transfer tax. So currently, general law cities can enact a real property transfer tax of up to $1.10 per $1,000 of value. So if you sell a $1,000 home, you would pay $1.10 in tax, and that is split with the county. So Pinole would receive, and does currently receive 55 cents per every $1,000 of value for property that's sold within the city. The real property transfer tax is paid once when a property is sold. It's different from a parcel tax or the ad valorem property tax that's paid every year. This is a transaction tax on the sale of the property. And the payment can be negotiated between the buyer and the seller as to who will pay. So charter cities can enact increased real property taxes above that $1.10. And the proposal to offer, like any new tax, a real property transfer tax needs to be approved by the voters. And becoming a charter city and enacting a real property transfer tax could be submitted to the voters as one measure. Because a real property transfer tax is a tax and structured as a general tax, it would require 4/5 of the city council to place the measure on the ballot. It would only require a simple majority from voters to be adopted. And a number of Bay Area cities have adopted and increased their real property transfer taxes in the last. And so here is just looking at neighboring real property tax rates, what's around there. And currently, the city of Pinole is 0.55 cents, and this shows you neighboring rates. And over the real property transfer tax, because it is based on real property sales, those can fluctuate a lot from year to year. We saw a low amount, like $51,000 about in revenue back in 2011 when the city was still exiting the Great Recession, and a high of 118,000 for the last year, and 2 years ago. I'm sure last year's information and have that final will be even higher just based on the plans in the month. So staff believes that about 100 under the current real property transfer tax, about $100,000 based on the past 10-year trend. $100,000 is a reasonable estimate of what the city will receive for the next few years. Presumably over time that will go up, but for the next few years. So if a real property transfer tax is set at $8 per $1,000 in value, which is equivalent to 0.8% of real property, the tax would generate about $1.45 million in revenue per year. That could be used for whatever purpose, for any municipal purpose. In addition, if the city elected to have the county administer this tax collected in the city, the county would charge about 1 to 3% in administrative costs. And turn over to Marquisha to talk about some of the financial considerations the council has.
The items of note with this is that the city has been able to sustain status quo service levels with modestly growing revenue sources, including the real property transfer tax. Under the current model, we have deferred some investments in capital assets and business systems as well as some of the human resources. But also have been able to remain pretty stable with the revenues that the city has generated. However, in the long run, it will lead to a deterioration of assets and systems without increasing the revenue as the growth and expenditures continue to outpace the growth in our regular revenue base. The RPTP would create another guaranteed source of locally controlled revenue that could be used to sustain and improve critical facilities and essential services in the long run. So just some things to be considered along with this potential ballot measure. This would add to the revenue base and allow the city to address some of those longer term obligations. Back over to the attorney.
Thank you. So becoming a charter city, there's a statutorily defined process in state law. And it requires 2 public hearings that need to be spaced apart. And then after the second public hearing, 21 days later, the council, if it desires, can place the measure on the ballot. So tonight is the second public hearing. And at the council's meeting in August, if it directs we could prepare the materials. So at that meeting, the council could decide whether or not to place this measure on the ballot. Like I mentioned earlier, the charter and the real property transfer tax ordinance can be submitted to the voters as one measure. So a up or down vote on those 2 things combined. That would only require 50% plus 1 from the voters. It would require 4 votes from the city council to place the measure on the ballot. So the proposed draft charter, it's the same exact charter that was the council reviewed last meeting. And it provides, it's relatively short, and it provides that the only power of a charter city that Pinole would be able to exercise is the power to enact and enhance the property transfer tax. Other than that charter, other than that power, under the proposed charter, the city would continue to operate as a general city. It would be subject to all of the applicable state laws. The status quo would be maintained, except for that one change to allow the enactment of the real property transfer tax. If there were any changes in the future, that would require subsequent approval from the vote. So tonight, for the first time, the draft real property transfer tax ordinance is before you to for consideration and feedback. And much of what's in that ordinance is sort of technical about definitions of what counts as a transfer and how the tax would be administered. Just to make sure the ordinance operates comprehensively. But the main bullet points are that, based on past council direction, that the tax that would be imposed is $8 per $1,000 of value. The buyer and seller are jointly responsible for paying the tax. And so they can negotiate between themselves who to pay it. If it's split, if one party pays it, that's the negotiation. The taxes due at the time the deed is recorded. So either at closing for a traditional sale that goes to escrow, or there's some other language in there about other sorts of situations that are less common. And the finance director on the ordinance is tasked with administering the tax, but the city can contract with the county to administer that, and that's how most cities do it, because the county, the deed is recorded at the county. There's other processes that go on at the county where the county is aware of what's happening, whereas the city was sort of after the fact happening. And one thing to mention is the real property transfer tax applies to transfers for value. So it doesn't apply to gifts. So an inheritance doesn't apply to inherited property because that's a gift. The ordinance also includes some other exceptions, like transfers to or from a government agency, transfers made, within the marriage. Or when the marriage, if there's a divorce proceedings and there's a negotiation, about how to separate things, that doesn't trigger it. And then there's a number of sort of legally required and standard, except. It does not at this point include a lower income exemption. Something that's discussed in the staff report is that we didn't find a lot of cities that have those. If any, it looks like Oakland is the only city that has a low income exemption. There could be others. We didn't check every charter city in the whole state, but we certainly looked at all of the local cities, and Oakland is the only one with a low income exemption. And in Oakland, they basically the tax still applies, but they pay at a reduced rate. So I believe in Oakland, it's 0.5% is taken off that rate there. And in Oakland, the sort of standard rate, they have tiered rates depending on the value of the home, but the standard rate there is 1.5%. So it's sort of a third discount. I think one reason you don't see a lot of low income exemptions is just based on the way that financing works. It becomes hard, unless you're in a deed restricted property, it becomes hard to both qualify for the low income status and also be able to qualify for the loan if you have both of those things, unless you're buy a market rate house. So unless you're in a deed restricted house, it just doesn't, there may not be much applicability, but we could certainly add that in the direction of the council. And under the ordinance, the council has ability to amend the ordinance in the future. This is the same as what's provided for most of the city's taxes. They make administrative adjustments, except that any expansion of the tax in the future, including an increase of the rate above 0.8%, would require voter. But for example, if the city decide in the future, we'll talk about rebates in a minute, but the city council decide in the future we want to offer rebates for more things, that's something the council can do without having to go to the voters. At the last meeting, the council did direct us to include rebates as part of the draft ordinance. In the way a rebate works is the city gets, a property owner gets a refund from the tax they pay to do certain improvements to the home. So based on council direction, this includes energy and water conservation projects, and there are some definitions of what that means in the ordinance that would include, rooftop solar and things like that. It's not an exhaustive list, and certainly the council could add to it in the future. Seismic upgrades and sewer lateral repairs are the three things that the council want in those. So those are all included. So the property pays the tax still and then can apply for a refund after the fact, in part because of the county's administering that. It just becomes very complicated to reduce the tax. The work needs to be performed either 1 year before the transfer or 1 year after the transfer to qualify. And this is not something the council provided direction on last time, but based on what we saw in other cities, the main ones being El Cerrito and Berkeley, they both limit the rebate to 1/3 of the tax amount. So that's what we included here, but that could certainly be and in that sense, this rebate is very similar to the rebates in El Cerrito and Berkeley. And for improvements. And again, this is something, if this was approved by the council, approved by voters, this list could be expanded in the future. So the council also directed staff to proceed with some community engagement. And when considering a ballot measure, a city can engage in limited education outreach activities. These activities have to be strictly educational and can't advocate for a potential measure. So, newsletters, outreach on social media, information on the city's website, that sort of thing. And so what the city, based on that direction, the city with its consultant did do some limited outreach to the community. A mailer was sent to every residential address in Pinole, not just voters, but every residential address in Pinole about the charter city, notifying them, that the city has some potential financial needs and that's considering becoming a charter city and notifying them of the July 2nd meeting. July 12th meeting. The city created a special website that was linked on the mailer with some additional information. It's, not extremely extensive, but, limited FAQ. There's some information there about what a real property transfer tax is. And both the website and the mailer provided ways for residents to provide feedback on city priorities and the charter of city measure. Provide some more info on them.
So to date, we received a total of 188 responses, both through the mailer and also through the website form. Of those, 16 individuals noted opposition to the charter city measure. So that wasn't one of the options on the actual survey. However, there's a comments section which allowed respondents to write in any comments. So there were 16 that noted opposition, and there was one that noted support only if the funds would be used for street maintenance. Overall, the survey laid out 6 priority areas, which you see that run across the top of the table. And what we did is look at the responses and how each area was ranked. So just looking at the highest priority, which is number 1, down to number 6, which is lowest priority, we see that the city's financial sustainability ranked number 1 most of the time, or more so than the other 5 priority areas, with improving fire protection and 911 response coming in second as a top ranked choice. And third, keeping streets, public areas, and parks clean came in third there, and then followed by the others, including retaining and attracting local businesses, maintaining safe places for children, and lastly, upgrading petroleum drains. So this is just a summary of how the majority of those, or how those items were ranked based on the responses that we did receive. And again, number 1 is the highest priority, and number 6 is the lowest priority.
So tonight, and one more thing just before I go over the slide, I forgot to mention on the rebates, the council had also asked us for information on how much it costs other cities, and the finance director was able to connect with her colleagues in El Cerrito, and they provided some information that basically showed, it fluctuates depending on how much is sold in a year, but their average one, I think, is about 1.4% of the tax collected gets rebated out. So tonight, we are seeking direction from the council on 4 broad topics. The first is whether to move forward with the process of becoming a charter city by directing staff to prepare the necessary materials for the city council to place a measure on the ballot at the August 2nd meeting. The second is the content of the draft charter, if the council has any additional comments on that. The third is the content of the draft ordinance. And then the fourth is whether the council would like the city staff to engage further on education and outreach activities that could include in the future and more detailed FAQs or that sort of thing. So, with that, I am happy to take any questions that thank you.
Thank you. So I will start with the question from the city council, and I will bring it back to the public for comments, and I will bring it back to the city council for comments. First of all, I would like to start with you, Councilmember Thomas. Good evening.
Sure, thank you. A couple of questions. If the council were to move forward to the August 2nd meeting, do we have any idea what the cost would be for the consultant that's doing community engagement? I understand that that's a monthly cost. I'm also wondering about city attorney costs? And then do we have a total for what the elections would cost? Thanks.
There would be costs. The cost, I think first the city attorney cost, there'd be the cost of preparing the ballot. We've already prepared the ordinance and the charter, so it would just be a resolution. That portion would not be significant. The alternate is on the monthly retainer that was prepared earlier, approved earlier by the council. So if we engaged with them for another month, we could look at the exact, is it 7? Yeah, or we'll look up that amount. And then there would be a cost for mailers. If you know, that could be a substantial cost depending on if, and then that could be probably the most significant of all those costs.
Other questions?
I'm happy to answer the question about additional costs for placing a measure on the ballot. So we budget always about $25,000, and depending on how many registered voters there are, the cost is about 22 to 25,000. The only additional cost for placing a measure on the ballot would be printing cost for the voter information guide. So it would depend on how much of the measure in the charter that we decide to print. And did I say 3 to 5? It's about 3 to 5.
And then just briefly through the chair, in addition, so Assistant City Attorney Bob mentioned the cost up just to get us to August 2nd, which would be preparing the ballot measure. If that was approved, then there would be a independent analysis by the city attorney that would be included as part of the ballot measure. And so there's just a little more work that would be required of us, but not at this point. We've already drafted the ordinance, and I think it would be fairly minimal.
Thank you. Any other questions, please? And Council Member Martinez Uben, good evening, ma'am.
Issues that have an unstable internet connection. I have several questions. One of them, with the how many mailers? I'll ask a second question. I think that was a question for the to what 188 received the mailers. And on the point of property, a question to our city attorney and assistant city attorney, and thank you both to date on this matter. Per public comment. Residences regarded as property. This transfer tax applies to real property, which would also include commercial. Is that accurate? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And do any work at all about the
That's a great question, Councilmember. It includes both properties. It is not easy to segregate that out without sort of doing a more thorough analysis, but we have a clear understanding of how much we've gotten from the county, but that's not readily available information. You know, where that comes from, what type of property that comes from. That would require sort of, frankly, looking at like a year's worth of sales to go and look at what sales occurred and come up with an estimate that way, rather than just relying on the tax that the county transferred over. So that is not something the city will receive. As I'm sure the council members aware, there's less commercial properties in the city than residential. The commercial value of some properties is much higher than a single family home, but they also tend to turn over less frequently than a single family home. It's staff really isn't prepared to estimate what the breakdown would be. And just regarding your first question, we don't have the with us the exact number of mailers that were sent, but they were sent to all residential addresses in the city. So to your point, that is a large denominator. And so the result is relatively small and not scientific. And there was the scientific survey that was presented to the council previously, but this was just another opportunity for members of the public to provide.
I understand. I think we have roughly 6,000 addresses, residences to whom a mailer like that. Done by the consultants, which reflected the likelihood that a measure like this would not pass. Presentation of would-be prospective voters for this. So I want to make sure that everybody, have that kind of gauge or perspective as well. Basic and fundamental, and I wish I would have thought about this meetings ago. If you would-be's as to the rationale for why a charter city, being a charter city, is a condition to be able to enact a property transfer tax. Is it, I think to increase the tax. So why that condition? What is it about the city that allows this to happen? We have about 125 out of 182 cities in California. Only about 26% that are charter cities at all. And I would think said it may be because they have alternative sources of revenue, given a bedroom community, largely residential. Back to the question, if you could offer as a condition, the charter city to be able to increase.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilwoman. So under state law, there is set the maximum real property transfer tax that can be charged, and that's $1.10 or $1,000 of value under state law, and that's state law says that has to be split between a city and the county. But as a charter city, charter cities have authority over their own municipal affairs, so sort of their own local issues, and municipal taxes are one of those issues that courts have said that's a municipal affair. So a charter city doesn't have to be bound by the state law regarding this issue. So a charter city therefore has the ability to enact something higher if it chooses to, and go back. So hopefully that answered your question.
Okay. Now let's go then to a question about municipal affairs. If I heard correctly, municipal affairs are not well defined. And so that allows either, depending on how one regards it, the freedom to create local ordinances that are not necessarily aligned with what state requires of the city, or, well, they would allow that. So managed to have that freedom. or so, or some way to control where things go awry. The experience of our neighboring cities, and I don't know if staff our neighboring cities, have there been some disadvantages? A charter city for the sole purpose of enacting a transfer tax at a higher amount than it was previously when they were a general lawsuit. Do we know any of that?
We don't know.
Another question. This passes, this measure passes. Ever a way to and help me out with the verbiage here, retract or
Yeah, like repeal
dissolve.
it. Yeah. So
Repeal, thank you.
the voters would have the authority, so to, just like the voters enacted the charter, the voters could take that away in the future. So they could either do that through the initiative process on their own, or, just like the council has done with other ballot measures, the council could submit that measure to the voters in the future and amend it. The real property transfer tax itself, if the council ever want to raise that, that would need to go for the voters for approval, but the council would have the authority to decrease that tax on its own. Like decrease it down to 0, or, could decrease it, cut it in half, could make that change permanently or temporarily. And that wouldn't require voter approval, but voters also would have the power at any time.
Soon after, if this were to pass, if this measure were to pass, how soon after could an initiative be or any changes in the value or the cost, or say it's a decrease, or the other aspect of this measure, which is to make changes to the charter?
So that could certainly happen at the next, on signatures being collected in time, but that could certainly happen at the next statewide election, which would be, in 2024. It may be, it's possible that there could be a special election too sooner than that. I don't know. Generally, there's restrictions on what can be at a special election, so we'd have to look into that, but certainly in 2024 at the general election in 2024.
These are my questions so far. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Member. Mayor Pro Tem Murphy, good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening. I have no questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Madam Finance Director, I would ask you a few questions about the situation of the city's finance. Earlier, you were mentioning about the state of a capital improvement plan, on how the city lacking the money to forecast and be able to complete the project that are on the project list for the next 10 years. And prior to this meeting, I've heard of city engineer stating any numbers between $50 to $60 million, between $50 million to $100 million that the city would need in the next 10 years to be able to finance those CIP. Is that correct?
According to the city engineer, yes, that's a rough estimate.
What is the city's financial plan to, at this moment, to find this $50 to $100 million in the next 10 years?
There is not a plan at this time. With the 5-year forecast and 5-year financial plan that the city currently has in place, it is noted as one of those longer term obligations to be addressed through the plan. And this could be one of the ways that could be addressed in addition to other financing options. But there is currently not a plan in place to address that.
Does it mean we don't have the money at this moment to be able to finance it? Is that correct?
I would say, no, we don't have the money to fund the full capital improvement program.
And roughly there were about probably 60% of that cost was associated to maintaining our roads, and the remaining 40% was associated to the sewer laterals and connection that we had, but roughly it was about maintaining our roads and the CIP that we have listed. Another question that I have, I don't know if the city engineer is here today.
I'm here.
Excellent. Mr. City Manager, City Engineer, good evening, sir. How many capital improvement plan are you working on a yearly basis at this moment?
This year we
Projects,
have
yes.
about 37 projects.
What's the out of those 37 projects, what is the full staff associated to complete those 37 projects in terms of project management from the city of Pinole?
Right now, we have only 2 staff who are dedicated for those projects, and 2 staff, meaning part of my time, and our capital improvement program manager, Miss Cole's time. So they have, you can say.
Thank you. Would you say that it's fair to say you are understaffed at this moment?
Yes, we are understaffed, but however, council has approved 2 more positions for this financial year. So we will be soon this financial year.
Say it again.
So we'll be recruiting 2 more staff for this budget cycle. The council has approved 2 positions, 1 associate engineer and a public works specialist for the fiscal year 22-23.
Thank you. Madam Finance Director, I do have another question for you. Let's suppose that the city is in need. Let's just suppose a number of $10 million per year for the next 10 years. If the city was in need of $10 million for the CIP project within the next 10 years, that will be about 100 million. But what are the means of taxation that the city has at this moment to be able to find $10 million per year? I think one of them was the real estate transfer tax. Another one was a bond measure, right? Another one would have been a parcel tax. What are the other means of taxation that the city has in this position?
All of those, the most common ones with, especially with bond measures for capital projects.
Thank you. So if I were to say that we basically have only 3, and I were to divide $10 million by 3, that will be about $3.33 million per year for each source of revenue. I know at this moment, if we were to enact at 0.8%, that real estate transfer tax, that will give the city approximately $1.5 million, which is, as I said, if I have 3 means of taxation, 10 divided by 3 is 3.3 million, that each of them would have to bring us. So that will be approximately 1.5 million, meaning that the remaining bonds and real estate and parcel tax would have to bring us approximately $5 million per year for the finance of the city to be able to finance a CIP. That will probably bring our, if we're to enact the parcel tax, that will probably require the city council to come with the parcel tax that would raise approximately $5 million per year. Earlier, if I were to tax $5 million, if I were to do that, I just want to run the numbers here, and I'm going to $5 million per year divided by 5,000 parcel that the city of Pinole does have, that approximately $1,000 of parcel tax the city would have to enact if we were to raise $5 million. And the remaining would have to come from the bonds. And I don't yet know how much bonds works. Can you explain me how that bond works very quickly? If I were to get $5 million for the next 10 years, that'll be $50 million of bond that the city would have to get. And And how would the people pay for the $60 million for their bonds?
It could be through property tax. With a property tax measure, that would add to the annual property tax that are due, to pay for those.
If we were to have 5,000, okay. So that would significantly increase the property taxes as well, on top of what we have. Let me see if I have another question here. The city of Pinole did increase its expenses for the last 2 years prior to compared to 2018. We did hire additional people. We did increase the salaries of many of our employees. What new sources of revenue were added to the city of Pinole?
There were not any new sources of revenue.
Let me see if that concludes the question that I had related to the finance of the city. Now I would open it back to the public for comments. How many people are on Zoom actually? I would let the people online and then I would open it to the people in the public. Please. When I'm sitting, go ahead.
At this time, we have 3 hands raised. We'll start with Roy Swearingen.
Evening, City Council and Mayor.
Good evening, sir.
A comment that have a little concern with. This measure of a charter city affects businesses and homeowners in Pinole. They feel that it's inappropriate and unethical that if there's any council member who doesn't own a property in Pinole and has no investment in the Pinole community, would vote, which they do not equally share. I think they should recuse themselves from the voting when the vote comes up on August 2nd. Feel that the public, if they have an opportunity and they have a nice computer, should look up Bell, the city in California, and see what happened to the people in Bell, city residents of Bell. Sanctions in place to try to prevent that, but they don't always work because you can fool the voters into thinking they're getting something that they're not getting. And that's exactly what happened in Bell. The city, it almost bankrupted the city. That's the public to work against so that everyone will know how our community feels and not just listen to it on TV or don't listen at all. As of course, a lot of people don't get this because they don't have Comcast and they don't have the ability to stream. But it is important to our community to look at this tax measure. I think there's other measures that we can put into effect to pay for things. I don't think that we're in danger of not having the necessary funding on a long-term basis to do the projects that we have listed on a long-term basis. We find ways to do them, and we will in other ways than continuing to tax the remaining residents of Pinole and the remaining businesses in Pinole that are paying heavy taxes already. Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney. That was the city of Bell, correct? BELL? Okay.
Yes, City of Bell.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Christy Lamb Julian. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you, city council members, planning commissioners, city staff. Engaging in this special meeting. Their truth. It is imperative for those on the dais to educate by me years in internet polls. I am thankful for Pinole Fair Government for between government and the people. It brings the information anything else to offer. We're investing in the bigger picture in the long run. Son, community organizer for the community members and first generation. Lead to our extension. Act of speaking up is hard. Showing up to these meetings is even up and taking the hit for all heard in an effort to combat misinformation and just bad politician behavior. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is calling in with the last four digits 8313. Go ahead, please. Please state your name and city of residence.
Hi, good evening, council. My name is Jackie Nasaya. I've been a homeowner in Pinole for over 33 years. After rewatching the first hearing on this matter and reviewing the consultant presentation, I find it quite astonishing that the council approved going forward with this meeting and other costly actions. It is clear that the majority of the citizens who spoke at previous council meetings do not want to become a charter city, nor do they want to pay a property transfer tax. The survey data presented by the consultants show that less than 50% of the people are in favor of making changes to our government. The Lou Edwards group, who conducted the survey, states that the city's tested measure does not meet their criteria for ballot placement. Their summary also states that the success of a measure will depend on changing opinions on the need for funding, which often takes time through education and communication. The election is less than 4 months away. Has the city already started this effort to change our mind? I haven't seen any materials and no planned meetings. I feel like this is being shoved down our throats. I will not vote for Pinole to become a charter city. I understand the city's position is to use this only as, or for the property transfer tax, and I don't believe the current council will make any changes to the government structure, but I do honestly believe it is a possibility in the future that council members will want to change our current system. It doesn't matter if it requires citizens to vote. Controlling power-hungry politicians can be very persuasive and convincing citizens to agree with changes under the guise of for the greater good of the community. I believe the city probably will need funds in the future, but I have no confidence the council of the city know how much is needed and when it is needed. Some figures were thrown out during the last hearing and tonight that don't make sense. And real-time calculations are being performed, which causes even more confusion for me. I believe the city needs to do more research on funding requirements, and they should also investigate the funding opportunities. I will pay additional taxes, no doubt, as long as other citizens participate. I don't buy into the argument that homeowners should pay more in taxes. There are senior citizens who own their own home, have high mortgages, and will not be able to pay this tax on their way out of their house. During the last hearing, the use of rebates was tossed around like a dangling carrot. After reading the draft measure and seeing the presentation tonight, most people will not have the opportunity to use it. There are restrictions. Work must approve within 1 year of selling your house or right after. The majority of people will not spend thousands of dollars for improvements and then move away. in less than a year. Council, please save money now and do not move forward with putting this ballot on the ballot, this measure on the ballot. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Irma Rupert. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Mayor.
Evening. Please go ahead.
Evening, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay, Mayor. Can you start the clock again? It went to,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you very much. Mayor and Council, my opinion on this is I've lived here over 40 years. I've seen measures come and go, work studies, all these surveys. In my opinion, you're doing an injustice. $25,000-$30,000, put it on the ballot. I'm for the taxpayers to vote on what is very important to them. We've heard a lot of misinformation on next door. We've heard comments from people. You know, you're one of the thousands of people who live in Pinole. I think do fair to everybody, educate, make sure that you believe in the taxpayers. The voters will be going in November. You're not only going to have 100 people voting, trust me, everybody's going to come out in November. People are going to come out and want the best of Port Pinole. Now, not knowing enough information, I do want information. And I refuse people to tell me yes or no. I'm owner of my house. I believe in finding solutions for the future. We've been status quo with the past administration. We haven't gone anywhere. We need to move the city forward in whatever means we can. Mayor and council, do what you can. Put it on the ballot. $25,000, $30,000. Do not put your own personal points on this. Let's educate the public. Do what's best for the city. And I disagree with former administrations coming forward and saying, don't do this and don't do that. You know, when they were in office, we did nothing. Everything was closed. We're looking forward to the future. We have a new future. I know taxes are hard. This is going to be difficult, a new system, charter city, but please come out with the facts and not lies, and let people know that, you know what, there's people out there. They are going to be campaigning and politically out there for their own good. And I just want to make sure we're all in this together, and let's all vote for the betterment of the city to move the city forward. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
That concludes our online comments. We have 7 in-person comments. The first 3 will be Eric Myers, Laurel Martin, followed by Tyra Wright.
If you don't mind restating your name, because I'm writing notes at the same time, please go ahead. So Myers, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council, public. My name's Eric Myers. I've been a business owner here in Pinole since 2004. Because of that, I'm a commercial property owner. I didn't get any of the information in the mail. Neither did any of the other commercial property owners. Neither did the out-of-town apartment owners or the out-of-town homeowners that provide housing much needed to people who can't afford to buy but need to rent. I think if we got this information to those folks and told them that you need to share 0.8% of your hard-earned equity in your property when you go to sell, I think you'd get a lot different survey results. And if you told them buyers may not want to come buy your property because they're having to share in a 0.8% transfer tax, you might get a lot different result as well. This idea that this is some kind of guaranteed income is complete nonsense. Transfer tax is tied to the real estate market. It's already cooling right now. We're hitting a down cycle. It's tied to values. If values go down, if this goes through, voters will be paying $9.10 per thousand. $1.10 of that will go to the county. Right now, $1.10 goes to the county, but half of it comes back to us. What's not been disclosed here is that $8 per thousand will come to the city, less the collection fee. But the 55 cents per thousand we're getting now goes to the county. That's what happens when you become a charter city. But the buyers and sellers still pay $9.10. I think the data presented by staff here tonight shows that a rebate program does not justify this. I heard a figure less than 2% of funds collected in charter cities for transfer tax went back in the forms of rebates. That's nothing. I mean, we need to look at why that is. I'll tell you why. Buyers have to pay it up front in cash anyways. Why would sellers want a rebate to do repairs when they've sold the house and moved somewhere else? Doesn't make any sense. And yet it's capped at a third. There's this condition, there's that condition. Okay, we'll make an exception for low income people. Well, we've heard already the problem there. How can you qualify to buy a house if you're low income, unless it's one of these restricted, deed restricted? How many of those do we have in the city? Not enough to make a difference. We're talking about we need money in the next 10 years. You know what? Government always needs money. Government prints money. Government always has to have money. There's always needs. That's why we elect you to be our representative government, is to solve these problems and address these needs. And there are other ways to raise money and address the needs. There is a reason that there are other cities who are not charter cities. There are reasons that other cities don't charge $8 per 1,000 in transfer tax. They found other ways. There are other ways. We've been doing it other ways since we became a city here in Pinole. Thank you.
Laurel Martin, Mayor, council members, staff, and all residents. I'm soundly opposed to having the transfer tax. I can understand the theory of some benefits of having some more municipal control, and I appreciate the program that was presented tonight. I can understand that reality to handling local issues. But the crux of this is the transfer tax. I think it unfairly, not only we've heard already about the impact on business. I think it unfairly it impacts a lot of senior people like myself who may have to sell their home through no fault of their own. And I just think that it's pretty prejudicial in that sense. And I think you're going to have a lot of unhappy residents if you pass this. I think you have to look for cutting corners. You have to look for some other way to get revenue. This is not it. Like I said, the charter city in theory is great, but the transfer tax is really unfair. And I agree. Who would want to get a rebate program if you do a whole rebate such as solar panels and that, and you have them for 1 year and then you sell your house? I don't see the sense in that. If it being longer term, I can understand that while you own the home. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. And thank you. And a lot of people I know feel the same. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Tyler Wright. I reside in the city of El Cerrito, but I am a licensed realtor, and I do work with clients up and down the 80 corridor. I understand that the city of Pinole is looking for additional funds to help pay for services for its residents and maintenance to the city, but a real estate transfer tax is just not the way to do it. You're asking for a very narrow base of people, including seniors and first-time home buyers of the population, to bear the expense of programs and services that benefit the community at large. The burden of the transfer tax on a home adds additional costs to a growing list of expenses like sewer lateral, gas shutoff valve, any other point of sale ordinance that is included when a person is trying to sell or purchase a home. One item of concern in particular is capital gains tax, which in addition to the real estate transfer tax will penalize seniors who have lived in the city for over 20 years when they decide to move. And as we've heard various comments from other people coming in, there are a number of people who've owned their properties longer than 20 years that have lived in the city of Pinole. For example, if a married couple who has lived in the city of Pinole for over 30 years purchased their home for $125,000 and sold it today for $875,000, they would have to pay $93,750 in capital gains tax, in addition to the real estate transfer tax. Even if the city of Pinole is considering an $8 per thousand, in addition to the $1.10 per thousand, that would be an additional $7,000 in total. A married couple, likely seniors, would pay a total of $100,750,000 in taxes. Additionally, a real estate transfer tax will decrease the affordability of housing in Pinole. The total effect of expenses could easily remove a first-time home buyer, such as a police officer, a teacher, a firefighter, from the market of Pinole. So I ask that you please consider researching the alternative sources for adding money to the general fund, such as bond measure, or even looking at the possibility of raising your user tax, utility tax, which would the full community would pay, rather than just having services rendered to everybody that only a narrow base of people would be paying, such as homeowners, buyers and sellers. Thank you.
Next three speakers will be Yvette Rico, Rafael Menes, and Frankie Martinez.
Good evening. My name is Yvette Rico. I have lived in Pinole for 52 years. And I recognize some of the realtors here because I've sold real estate for Security Pacific back in the 70s. I recognize some of my neighbors. And I imagine some of the realtors also don't live and own in Pinole, as Mr. Swearingen has asked the council members to recuse themselves for that reason. I want to thank you, Mayor Salimi, because your vision and your attempt to find and explore a solution to the future financial problems of the city is commendable. Unfortunately, you are outnumbered and you are outvoted. And I am sorry that this is what this community has come to. Because this city needs money, always will, and always has. So now we're going to talk about other sources of revenue. What are those other sources of revenue? I'm very eager to hear what those are. But now is not the time. Most taxpayers, tax is a 4-letter word. And right now, with our economy in flux and the uncertainty that people are feeling and continue to feel since the pandemic is not going away. I applaud you. I agree with you. I think it's a good idea, and we will learn our lesson, because I think at some juncture we will regret that we did not take this step forward. What I do agree with in some comments that I've heard over the last couple of council meetings is a distrust that they feel would be implemented by the use of a charter city and the power that we give to the city council members. I agree, because it wasn't too long ago when our city council betrayed us and put Measure P on the ballot. So I understand that feeling intensely and clearly. We don't want to have city council members making us the fall guy. Thank you.
So I'd like to begin by drawing people's attention to a few points. First off, in the survey, it said that upgrading storm drains is by far the lowest priority on the list of the people surveyed. And I think it's important to note just why it's important that storm drains be upgraded, because this is one of the things that would be funded by this. Because the city of Pinole pays more money every winter when stormwater goes in from poorly maintained and repaired storm drains, goes into the sewer lines and gets charged against the city of Pinole's account at the sewer plant. So it creates an ongoing expense to the city of Pinole when we don't properly maintain our infrastructure. So that's one of the reasons why I think that should be a higher priority. Secondly, I think that one way we should consider this tax is by looking at it, effectively speaking, as another form of sales tax. People could make the same argument about sales taxes, basically saying, oh, it's a sales tax that's going to primarily impact people that are buying things. It's not going to necessarily impact everybody in the community because not everybody is necessarily buying the same amount. Some people are buying things that fall within taxable categories, other people are not. But we still don't think that sales taxes are unconstitutional because they're too specific. I think that a real property transfer tax isn't too specific because over time, gradually, it's going to apply to everybody that does a transfer. In any given year, there might not be that many people making a sale. Fine. In any given year, there might not be that many people buying, say, diamond necklaces or some other high sales tax value item. But those people that do are going to pay higher sales tax than those people that don't. And we agree that that's generally beneficial because the city has the right to tax the transfer of goods. And I don't see how the transfer of property is so fundamentally different from the transfer of any other kind of good as to make it completely acceptable. I think that the city should consider having rebates, having them extend for a longer period than 1 year. If it moves forward on this, and perhaps consider having the tax be graduated to apply at different rates to different magnitudes of tax. I guess that's the sum of my time. So I'll thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Salini, city council members, city staff, and the community. My name is Frankie Martinez, and I live here in Old Town. And I'm here to ask our civic leaders to place on hold both the charter city and the real property transfer tax agenda items. Current economic climate today nationally, statewide, and even here in our city, there are a few reasons why we need you to consider placing the RPTT on hold. Inflation, our stocks are plummeting and taking a major hit, and we're looking at a potential recession. Our homes are currently our safe haven. I would like to thank you in advance, Mayor Salini, City Council, City staff for all the hard work which went into bringing this solution to the city. I hope that we can revisit the charter city and real property transfer tax at another time when we're in a better economic climate. Thank you.
The last two speakers I have are Debbie Long and Bob Kopp.
Good evening again. I don't believe we're being given the full picture of why additional taxes are needed and why we should form a charter city in order to raise those taxes. Looking at the strategic financial plan through 26-27, the city is rating the 115 trust for a total amount over the last 6 years from 21 to the 26 of $15,678,635 in order to balance their annual budget. As previously stated and validated by all council members and the then city manager, Michelle Fitzer, when this trust was established in 2018, it was done so to offset the PERS rate increases so both the city and the employee would not have to absorb the future costs. However, our now city manager uses this to offset all PERS increases since 1819, including the cost of hiring new employees and also what I can figure the cost to repay the pension obligation fund. Ultimately, by the year of 26-27, 3.2 million for that fiscal year will be transferred from the trust. In this case, that's an oxymoron, to the general fund in order to cover the increase of expenditures from the 2021 to the fiscal year 26-27. This is a total of 7 million, over 7 million that has been misused from the original intent. So I ask the question, if the council has been in need of additional revenue, why haven't you first started with cuts to the budget? Instead, you continue to approve money and increases in the budget. Additionally, if an RPTT is passed, would you put it in a hands-off fund until it was approved for a project? I also don't find it coincidental that the council is waiting to approve the contract with Fire until they try to change the style of government in the city. Because given the fire budget of 5.5 million for one station and adding 2 million from the county, that's only 7.5 million to cover 2 stations without a substantial contribution from the general fund and or shifting of financial obligation to other departments. It just doesn't pan out. It is my conclusion that the charter city is a red herring for many more taxes to come because even the real estate transfer tax will not cover a budgetary shortfall when excluding the rating of the 115 pension trust fund, nor will it cover the necessary additional funds to open 74, much less pave any roads. The charter city will just enable this or future councils to continue coming to the public for more taxes. However, under a charter, they'll just have more tools in their toolbox. Also, I would like to say I did not receive a mailer either. In fact, I don't think anyone up in our neighborhoods received anyone. And the poll as presented tonight appears to be more of a push poll than what the other polls have stated earlier. I just believe that we need discussions in more of a debate format as opposed to people having just to stand up here for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Bob Kopp. We asked a question, how much have the city spent already? They made a couple of comments. We never did find out how much they paid the staff. The staff has to get paid for all the work they do on this project. And how much did we pay our city attorney to work with the staff in order to come up with what we have now? I did not receive a card that they keep talking about. And my daughter lives across the street, and my son lives in town, and they haven't received any kind of a card out. And if you go to the other way of doing our government, the city council will keep coming back and back again, trying to get more money, and pretty soon the people will give in and give them what they want. It's kind of like looking back at the way PG&E does things with the state of California. They turn in every couple of months, they want a rate increase. And if they don't get it this month, they turn it in next month and next month until finally the PUC gives them what they want. If you look back in history, what my dad was telling me years ago, he didn't have a problem with federal income tax. Because when we first enacted it, it was 1% of their salary, which is 1% is fine. Well, you can see what happened in all these years. It's sure not 1%. It's not 10%. It's depending on how much you make, get it up to 20 or 30%. So this can be what happens with this way they want to change the government over. And I think it's wrong that we're trying to push this through right now, like a few other people said, with the way the economy is. Nobody really knows which way we're going right now. And I think to put another burden on, I know I've owned my home for 55 years. And I paid all the taxes, I paid all the upkeep and maintenance on my property. We never got anything from the city in order to help maintain our property. And naturally it has run up in price. And I don't see why we should have to pay any extra tax because of capital gain. We are the ones that put the money into the homes, kept them up, and paid all the necessary taxes for a long time. We have a couple of people that were talking tonight about the taxes. Well, two of the people that did the talking tonight, I won't mention their name, neither one of them own a home. So they don't have to worry about this tax at all because they don't have a home that they want to sell. Somebody else owns it and they do not. Thank you.
Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comment at this moment?
Just given some information that we have someone online that's trying to get through, but I don't see. No, maybe. Online, not get a chance to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. Here, so we have Peter Murray. Go ahead, please.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. And there's been a lot of discussion and, some of it directed at one person or another. Let's not just forget that, this is an opportunity for public comment and, we're all allowed to speak and speak our minds. And I think that, that more or less haven't seen things the way I see them spoken tonight. And but they said one thing, and one thing that I do hold dear, and that's that, it's up to the public and the public should vote on it. So down the road, if that's the way we go, that's fine. But I'm just curious because this is, I mentioned it at another meeting that we had about where we hired consultants who came back with a recommendation, and I don't know who in the city just decided to shelve that recommendation, and we never talked about it again. But it wasn't, in favor of what was being proposed at the time. But we've done these polls before, and it seems to me that back in 2019, we had various agencies, the current consultant that we have tonight, who's been participating in town hall meetings about, what people's interests are. And in those polls that we had, the finances and the fire were not part of the top three. And now we have as part of the top three. And I'm just trying to understand how that, worked out. But then when you look at the numbers of who participated, it's kind of obvious. And it wasn't like the poll was where people could do it with some kind of anonymity. And so I think that you probably didn't get a lot of support because of that. And I'll just say this tax is not equally administered, and only those that are selling their property will pay this tax and be paying for a larger share of the city's administration and capital improvement needs. And so, it's being done on their backs. And that's the one thing that I've kind of been steady about, that I think that is unfair about this tax. And again, and as was noted by an earlier speaker, it's a 9% tax. It's not an 8% tax. It's 8% for the city, but all told, it's a 9 because we are giving up half of a percent to the county. All the information gets out, the appropriate and proper information. But again, like I said, what changed between the polls that we did in 2019 and the polls that we're reviewing now? And have a concern about that. And I think we need more meeting, a realistic city sponsored meeting, and talk about these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. I just want to clarify that the previous speaker did not say 9%. He said $9 per $1,000. That's 0.9%. That's
well, you use $8 as 8%. So I'm assuming that when he says $9,
Yeah, yes, it's 0.8% or 0.9%. It's not 9%. Just want to clarify. Thank you. I will, do we have any other public comment?
So it looks like we've concluded public comment. We do have a hand up still from Christy Lamb Julian, who's already spoke.
Yeah, I understand, sure, that's spoken, so, Ms. Lam Julian, you already made the comment up related to the charter city. I will ask you to please lower your hand unless you have an emergency or something different that you want to tell us, but it's not the procedure. I will, give her a second. I just want to see what she has to say. Go ahead.
There, thank you for giving me the second. I just wanted to thank City Council for this opportunity for providing an option to the community. And with just, if we're gonna have that conversation, we might as well have the conversation. Like distancing, just to be fair. And I do think it's just really inappropriate because they are trying. I know that I've spoken to a lot of people in marginalized communities here. I hold from speaking up retaliation from several people in the community about supporting this this idea. So I just want to put that out there that there are people, the marginalized community members here, that are stifled from speaking up to speak for them, to say that we do. Everybody can afford to own a home.
Thank you. I did not cut off the microphone. I don't know if that cut off, but it wasn't for me. I saw the hand of Peter Murray raised again. I don't. Okay. Okay, that concludes public comments. Okay. We have one more hand here. Vincent Wells, please go ahead.
Mr. Wells, go ahead.
No, I
please.
did not. I did not have any comments. I'm sorry.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That concludes comments from the public at this moment. Peter Murray, please go ahead. I will let you speak again since I let Christian Lamb speak. Please go ahead.
I was just gonna say, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes, I was just gonna say, that's the risk that you run by letting people speak over and over again. It's not, like I said before, you're just offering people the opportunity to speak, and some will be against and some will be for. And that's the end of discussion. I heard this bit about redlining and all of that, and I don't know where that comes from. But anyway, you should conclude and, don't allow one person to speak more than anybody else, just like I'm doing now. Cut
Okay,
me off.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I cut you off, Peter. Go home. Your wife is waiting for you. Okay, thank you. That was a former mayor, Peter Murray. Very nice person. Okay. Any members who haven't spoken who want to speak a third time? I'm just kidding. Okay, good. So I don't see any more hand raised. I will just turn it back to the city council for comments. Councilmember Thomas, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. First of all, I wanted to respond to Mr. Kopp's comment. At the last meeting, I embraced the idea of having a really good discussion. I understand that we have needs in the city. However, I am not in support of the charter city proposal. I was not offended whatsoever. I thought that this was a very good discussion that we had. last time, and I think it's a good discussion that we're having with all of the community participation that we have here and online. So I just wanted to say that. As far as the transfer tax, like last time, I do recognize that we have an unfunded list of capital improvement projects that we need to have funded in the coming years. However, I think that a real estate transfer tax, it only taxes a minor part of the population. It's either going to tax a new property owner. A lot of times those are brand new first-time home buyers, or seniors that are going into retirement and need to fund their living expenses for the next phase of their lives. So those are two segments of our population that can ill afford any additional taxes, and it's to benefit the community-wide, the community as a whole. The community as a whole has needs, and I think that the solution to those are some kind of revenue that is applied to the community as a whole, whether it's a parcel tax, not just a parcel tax to property owners, but apartment owners, at different levels, similar to how we have, done bond measures for the schools, and we've gotten some really beautiful schools that were in significant need. And I know everybody here who's in West County, West Contra Costa Unified School District is aware what that looks like on your property tax. But it's an investment in our communities, and it helps raise our property values. And I think the same would be true if we had a parcel tax. And the reason I say parcel tax as opposed to a bond measure is that there's a lot of expenses that come with a bond measure. You could, get a big chunk of money up front, but you're paying it off over 20 or 30 years when you spent the money for infrastructure in year one. You're still paying for it in year 20 or year 30, however you put that together. But if you had a parcel tax, that's ongoing revenue. It's something I'd be interested. I don't know if it's out of tonight's meeting that we asked, direct staff to, move forward on, whether it's polling or education or whatever it is, to figure out if there's an appetite for that and how much there's, what's the amount. And I did some math in thinking that if we were looking at getting 1.45 million on a real estate transfer tax, if we divided that by, say, 6,000 parcels, that would be about $241 per year. And if that parcel tax could increase with the, if there could be COLA increases built into that. I did look at demographic information. I did see that there's 7,106 units, but I'm estimating at 6,000 just because we know that there's a lot of multifamily in there. And I'm also concerned about spending money on a tax measure that survey results suggest that it won't pass. We do know that there's opposition, there's organized opposition to a measure. So if we know that ahead of time, and we know that the survey results without having a campaign are that it wouldn't pass, I, would be hesitant to move forward on an investment of putting it on the ballot. Let's see. And I think that kind of answers the question, my comments. I do want to applaud our mayor for looking outside the box. I know that he has recognized that this is, a need. I just don't think it's the right one. And I did want to make one more point, is that when we've done surveys the community has come back and said that they don't see the problem. So we do need to do some education. I think us sitting up here and the previous council members do understand that there is a need and we need to look at, some other revenue resources in the future. But if the voters don't see it, it's not going to be successful. So I think that we do have work to do. And I like to say that, give ourselves a timeline of, we're not going to make it in 2022, but in 2024, that should be, something that we look at, educating the community and trying to find a solution that could be palatable and equitable for all of our citizens. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Thompson. I appreciate your comment. I think education is part of it and spend a lot of hours and time here working on it. 1.4 million will be divided by 6,333 per year for parcel tax. And depending on what the numbers are that we will need approximately about 5 to 10 times more money than that. But if we were just to charge in parcel tax, that would be approximately $2,000 per parcel, and which is very expensive. And I don't think that number anybody would be able to pay $2,000 just per year to raise $10 million. But I see where you're going. I see where you're coming from, and I agree with you. Thank you very much. Councilmember Martinez Ruben, please go ahead.
You, pardon, trying to work with my light here and my internet connection. I hope I'm audible. I would echo what Councilmember Toms has said, both of the perception that those of us who seem to spoke in the past and were possibly offended by comments made by colleagues. I'm not sure what that's about. If that's an observation that someone made, that's that person's observation. I have to tell every person who can hear this that when we first enter into office, part of our orientation is not to take things personally. We don't do this for personal reasons. We do it because we believe that we have some sense about what is presented before us, and both in combination of hearing public comment as well as staff's work and our professional side, and also in reviewing ahead of the meeting what other studies have done, and potentially also any information about the effectiveness of things that are proposed. Each of us prepares differently, but that gives you an idea of what I do, because the matters that come before us certainly aren't on to these activities, exercises, studies. It's how we go about doing so in Pinole that may be new, because people rotate into the city. We have new residents, we have new council members with different levels of experience, et cetera. So all in all, given the different levels of the same information at the same time. So we keep trying. And thank you for bearing with us as we also learn. And with a lot of certainty. And so we do our best in trying to come up with some decisions. With regard to tonight's matter, and I will hold on to the notion levy a tax that is for selected people is not a fair tax, and that it's conditional on a city being a charter city, which in and of itself has not been explored, talking about informing / educating the public of what that entails. We've heard a bit of the transfer tax, but there's more, and that's part of the uncertainty. And I think it's not the right time to consider doing something that would affect our city beyond this possibility of augmenting the amount. That condition, that this tax could be levied at a higher amount. As a power of being a charter city that hasn't been discussed as thoroughly as it could be. And that, I don't ignore the fact that our city is short in terms of millions of dollars. It's been the case over the past decade for different reasons, economically, not only because of Pinole's specific economic condition in our state. That is still the case now. And I think some of the public comments have reflected that. I am concerned about a couple of things that were expressed during public comment, and that part of my direction to staff, if someone would please take note, is that at a future meeting not too far into the distance, we clarify and we come away with the same understanding, both among the council and among the public, about this matter of the trust, how Trust 115 has been used. Heard some expressions that border on not too well. Rating the Trust 115, I don't think that the intention of doing so was to do something that would harm our city into the future. A trust, as with all kinds of trusts, does have a limited amount of money over time. So perhaps that's what we have to characterize a rating of the trust, but it just does not seem that staff to let us know a little bit about asking for increased information. Evidently, not everyone received the one mailer. I'm not sure if my camera's going to capture this. Very had a header, Pinole's financial future during the conversation, which was which had a tear off to either do snail mail or to log online to presented earlier by staff. If not everyone has received it, it's not a good thing. But that was to capture many more people that would otherwise know about what's going on at City Hall. Even Zoom. And we know that's a very, very so clarify before we go too far. Comments have been made about the percentage of amount of tax. Some is currently for the transfer tax, the amount that goes to the county, and then the additional percentage that is being proposed. Just for tonight, just to make sure that we go away knowing what the actual proposal. I suppose I have to wait. And then I would be ready to offer a motion if we need to, or respond to the questions that staff has presented with regards.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. And I'm just gonna wait for Mayor Pro Tem to make a comment, and then I will make my own comments, and then we can move on into how you want to proceed tonight. Mayor Pro Tem Murphy, please go ahead.
Good evening. I also hope you can hear me well. And first and foremost, I wanted to thank those who are out in, I appreciate your input, your insight, but of course your presence. I wish I could be there, but I just wanted to, in efforts to keep our community safe with the rise of COVID and of course now monkeypox, I thought it would be safer to remain home. One of the council members who frankly said I myself wasn't too aware of both the transfer tax as well as the charter city amendment. or how cities have done this. So I'm very thankful to our city staff who really supported our issue. And thank you to Mayor Salini, of course, for your vision and offering an idea why we do public hearings. This is why we serve on council. And this is why we believe in democracy that allows for folks to be part of the solutions. And of course, right? To understand the issues that we're dealing with in our own city. And of course, to find out how we can solve those issues with innovative ways to fund them. So I just wanted to start off by saying that because I know we've come a long way in terms of learnings, in terms of opportunities to understand our community more, in terms of just making sure the community has come out you all concerns, but also you all opportunities out of this moment. So very thankful for that. I wanted to highlight a few learnings that I felt like I've heard in the community, we've seen from our presenters from the past couple of council meetings. I think also create a huge opportunity of resolve in this moment. First and foremost, I want to say public hearings are a good thing. Public hearings are a good thing. We hold these public hearings so that we can understand all issues that may come to this council and for folks to provide an opportunity to express themselves on how they do it. So I know there was, some comments that said, why are we doing these public hearings? Why do we continue them? Well, we do it so that we can hear you. Otherwise, we'll go back in time where there was a time where folks did not hear our community. Folks did not understand the different needs of our community. And we're here to make sure that as we continue our public hearings, we make sure there's an opportunity for us to engage more people. Through this process, we receive data. Is an imperative. Climate resiliency programs and making sure that our parks are safe for our city residents. Improving our fire services are important to our city residents. And of course, investment in our senior and youth facilities are important. Have the data to back them. And part of this process is not all about the charter city, only about the real estate property transfer tax, but it's truly about finding ways for us to understand if we want to meet the how are we going to do that without the data to back up? And I want to really, again, thank our city staff, our city attorney, our assistant city attorney, our finance director, and even our city engineer, who have so supported the understanding of this particular issue. But I also think in this conversation, we've also been able to better understand some of the other issues that have come to this council. And I'm so grateful for that. Particularly as Mayor Pro Tem, I find that understanding holistically and generally some of these issues a bit more. Again, from the community members speaking out, it's been great. I also want to highlight what has been said by several council members as well as the mayor and our finance director that right now we do not have a financial structure and for our climate resiliency programs. We don't have a financial plan. We have hundreds of millions of dollars of deferred maintenance, and we have capital improvement programs that aren't necessarily programs because they're not funded. So what do we do with that? It's not enough to continue to say no. It's not enough to continue to say we can't do it. And it's not enough to continue to say that's not possible. We've got to be a council and a community to say, how might we design? We've got to be a council and a community to say, how might we make this happen? Also believe in our community. So we've got to build out a way for us to communicate that. Director tonight that there have been no new forms of revenue for the city for years. Not only is this disappointing given the time for our financial stability for the next decade. And so I want to remind the public that this is a priority of yours. We saw in the data that financial stability is critical to our future and to the priorities of you. And so for me, what I want to uplift is that without innovation in our revenue generation, we're going to meet problems that we've dealt with in the past, right? If we truly believe in the financial stability of our city, we've got to look to new revenue. And yes, City governments always need money because city governments are providing services like police, like fire safety, like community Wi-Fi, like community development, like community events. Services have been a safety net for many residents, homeowners, as well as renters. Community. First and foremost, I need to say that renters and homeowners are both a part of this community. Renters, anyone who says otherwise is truly a part of the bigotry we have to fight right here in our home front. There's renters in the last 4 years, and it's one of the reasons we have more engagement. We also have greater representation than ever before. But it's also important for residents who hear this to hear it as a divide and conquer tactic and to reject it. If we're going to move forward, if we're going to have the solutions we need to have to improve the quality of life for all residents, we have to ensure that we don't make statements that divide our community. Renters and homeowners are a part of this community, and it's important that any solution we have, any service we provide, are provided to all of them, not just some folks, not just the wealthy, not just folks who are able to get and access certain gains that others aren't. Is key. I think every council member has said it. One of the challenges of this moment, I think, is that we're all working on this short timeline around this charter city and this real estate property transfer tax. It's been very short, even, in my opinion, it's much more shorter than any ballot measure I've worked on personally. And what I will say is this 3% number of respondents back is, as someone who's in the field of engagement and particularly outreach for both government clients as well as organizations, that is actually an average performing statistic in terms of a mailer being sent out. So do we need to do better? Absolutely. Can we do better? Absolutely. But I want to uplift the 188 folks who spoke, who committed to us understanding, to the 46 people who made written public comment tonight, to the tens of dozens of people who've made public comment or written correspondence in the past. We hear what we've done is, from what I've heard of members in the community, the approaches we've taken have far improved from last year and certainly from year before. And this should certainly be celebrated. But like I said, we can certainly do it. We can do more, and timing is everything. In the past, we've seen councils in this city vote against the will of voters by aiming to overturn term limits like Measure P. Well, luckily they failed. In the past, we've seen councils shut down Station 74 and disregard our hard worker of firefighters. Well, fortunately, now we're deciding on how to move our city forward. But those are prime instances in this moment that I see as a council member, and one of the newer council members, of our council's not listening to community. And perhaps those we listen to in those communities reach out to us to help us govern. You're doing it now, and I want to challenge you to continue to do it. Help us identify deferred maintenance of our roads, the deferred maintenance of our parks, our senior center, and our youth center. I'm going to conclude with these 3 points, and I'm also happy to take us into a motion or Mayor, let us know the direction you want to take. But change is hard. Change is really, really hard. Generations to come. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciated the last conversations we had, and I appreciate the conversation that we've had for the last year about new ideas, because these are the learnings I've received, and the community continues to come out and tell me, at least, that they are receiving more information and that this is a part of the democratic process. Again, I appreciate the residents in the community who submitted surveys, who emailed me, who met with me over the last few months. But I do want to say that we have to continue to look to solutions to increase revenue to strengthen the needs of our community. This development strategy that could also bring in more revenue. But I also want to explore others. And I think, Councilman Thomas, you've mentioned several things tonight that could be opportunities for exploration. I do understand that right now, the challenging time, given all the things that are going on in our world today, given the short time frame of this particular issue that we've had to. I did want to uplift those comments because I think in this moment more than ever, this is the time where we, and not to pass statements and divide and conquer statements. Those don't work. And what I mean by that is they don't work for our inclusion, and those are folks who seem to kind of want to have that range of power in their hands and only for us to all work for ourselves together. And I think that Mayor Salini, again, I want to uplift, thank you for another idea. I know that this may be hard for you, particularly given, what I see of a lot of disagreement with what you see as a good idea. But I do say that this is a way for us to start thinking about the innovation that needs to happen in our city, the revenue generation that needs to happen in our city, and of course, the who's who of our city for folks to understand that it's not just them living here anymore, it's all of them. It's the way we live as well. And we all deserve to be a part of this conversation, each one of us. So thank you again, Mayor Salini. Thank you, council. Thank you to the public. Thank you, city staff. I love this. I think we need more of this dialogue. And I, again, am happy to continue the dialogue with community residents while as a council member, but also while we're not in council meetings as well, because I know that's where a lot of dialogue happens. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I've been lucky enough to be appointed mayor of the city for this year, and I've been on city council for 4 years, and I do operate business like a businessman. I sometimes look at my citizen as a son because I do have a mother that is about the same age of some of the people I've spoken today. So sometimes I'm your son, sometimes I'm your mayor, sometimes I'm a businessman, and I try to look and solve those issues that we have had for the last 4 years. When I joined the city council 4 years ago, we have had the same issues that have been on the city for years. One of them was the library. The city council worked all together to increase the hours of the library. That was done within the first few meetings. The other one was how could we develop the businesses downtown? The city council and city staff worked together in closed session, was able to successfully sell those businesses within a year. Some businesses that couldn't been sold for years. We, at the same time, worked together with the county Merger X and everybody to be able to have that fire station open. Discussion that was on hold for 20 years. We successfully were able to solve these issues within 3 years with the county. Also, we're successful to solve that the Farrer's House conversation that the city has had for almost 20 years. That Farrer's House has been funded as part of the CIP. It's not an issue anymore. All those issues that we have had and people were worried about and were the subject of conversation for the last 20 years has been solved in less than 4 years with this existing city council. And I'm extremely proud of all the work we have done. As a businessman and as a commercial pilot, I always try to look ahead. I have to stay ahead of the aircraft. If I start preparing the aircraft when I'm looking at the runway, it'll be too late. The aircraft will be coming too fast and I will not be able to manage power management. What I'm proposing to you is to look ahead next 10, 20 years. We have solved those issues we have had for the last 20 years. In less than 4 years, we solved those issues. Try to look ahead, try to see what's happening in the next 10 to 20 years. Everybody lives, everybody dies. The reality of life. What I'm looking at is that we are in need of an extra $50 to $100 million in the next 10 years. And the money has to come from somebody. And the longer we wait, the more expensive it will be for many reasons. Because inflation, it costs more money to fix a road in a bad condition than to maintain a road in a good condition. Things are not going to get easier. We have this window of opportunity now that can make us be successful, that can make us be where we want to be in the next 10 to 20 years. Can we wait? Yes. But the burden of waiting is going to cost us 10 times more money, and it's going to be even more difficult. We have that competitive advantage today of being where we are, of solving all those issues that we have had for the last 20 years, all gone. Let's start to look ahead. start to think about what is good for your child, what is good for your grandchildren, not just because you're about to retire. It's we are a community. We all have to work together as a community. Thank you. I will turn it then back to the city council for direction. Please. Councilmember Thompson.
Not sure if we need a motion to not continue the item, or if we just don't take action.
The chair, so staff has presented 4 items where we would appreciate council direction. There would need to be a motion for to direct staff to move forward with that. So we would appreciate a motion. That wouldn't a motion in the negative wouldn't be ideal. If someone would like to make an affirmative motion directing staff, that would be the best way to proceed.
Councilmember Thomas would like to make a motion.
I'm looking for the slide. that has-
I'm sorry.
I see.
Councilmember Martinez, when you have your hand raised, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I see it on slide 20. But whether, number one, whether to move forward with the process of becoming a charter city, the content of the draft charter, the content of the draft RPT ordinance, and whether to continue education outreach activities. And I don't have an affirmative motion for that. So I'm not sure how to.
Also make a motion to not proceed.
Okay, I would make the motion that we not proceed with the charter city proposal and the RPTT ordinance.
Motion?
City Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
for the record that Councilmember Cleve is absent. Councilmember Toms,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy,
Yes.
and Mayor Salim.
No.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. That's a 3 no's and 1 yes.
3 yeses to not proceed. 1 absent and 1 no. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is another item that talked about the education.
I
Whether
believe,
to continue education and outreach, but I'm not interested in making a motion, but perhaps a future agenda item that we continue the conversation and we explore other funding sources, and whether it's just a math exercise on, how many multifamily residences we have, how many single family, how many commercial, and, what a parcel tax might look like.
The chair on this existing meeting agenda, because it's a special meeting, we don't have an item for requesting future agenda items, but at the July 19th meeting, which is our regularly scheduled city council meeting, there will be an opportunity to submit that request.
I will do that. Thank you.
Welcome.
thank you. I think that concludes that item number 5, correct, Mr. City Attorney?
That's correct.
At least it was a great conversation and people are aware of what's happening. We are putting in position yourself for the next 2 years. That concludes item number 5. Then I will move on to item number 6, which is the adjournment to the special joint city council and planning commission meeting of July 13, 2022 in remembrance of Amber Schwartz and as well as in remembrance of my grandmother who passed away in Paris yesterday. She was 86 years old and she will be missed and I love her very much. Thank you.